Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mindful Matters. This is Allie and Liz.
Hey guys.
And today our topic is communication and why it's important to communicate clearly, respectfully, and also the importance of listening, which is also part of communication.
Super important.
Our self-care tip of the day, you want to tell us about it?
So, self-care tip of the day. First of all, I didn't wear any makeup because I didn't feel like wearing any today. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go with it and be natural today. And it feels really good. So I don't think people have to wear makeup every single time. And it always feels like good. And the next self-care tip, too, is books. So me and Allie both brought some books. Allie, you want to talk about yours? Which
we're going to refer to this book probably a lot this episode because it is so good. It's called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall B. Rosenberg. And at first when I picked up this book, I thought it was going to be like a snowflake book, you know, like, oh my god, don't say this, or you might trigger someone, or don't say this is violent communication. But it's not, and I'm really happy it wasn't, because it really just tells you how to say things clearly and speak in a way that acknowledges that everybody's human and everybody has needs. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably going to refer to this book a lot today.
I'm so
What
excited.
About your book?
Okay, so my book, I have two, actually. It goes based off of last podcast episode. So this book is called The Choice by Edith Ava Eger. And it's about, she's a Nazi Holocaust survivor. She was in one of the worst concentration camps in Germany.
Wow.
And she survived. And the book talks about what do you do when you have absolutely, like, nothing to yourself, anything. Like, how can you survive? Like, what do you do? And the punchline for this is no one can ever take away what you put inside your own mind. And that's all she had, because everything else, she was, like, shaved. She had no clothes. She was, like, stripped. All her possessions were gone. So it made me think, like, you know, in today's society, we have a lot of things. We have a roof over our head. We have food, you know, a lot of resources. So what do you do when you have nothing, and how do you persevere? So this was a really good book, and how to heal from it, too. So it talks about healing. And then the next book that I have is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Speaking of communication, this book is so good. It was one of the door openers for communication, which talks about empathy. The basis of this story is Chris Voss was a FBI hostage negotiator.
Wow.
And he saved people because you can't split the difference with people, right? You can't get half of them back. Like, you need all of them back.
Right.
So he negotiated with terrorists, and he and hostage takers? Hostage situations, and he brought people back, and he gives step-by-step instructions of how to not only, like, you know, in everyday life we don't negotiate with such high levels, but it talks about empathy, it talks about communication, it talks about de-escalating a situation. And let me tell you, I have used this on friends, on family, on partner, or like with a partner, and it's so helpful. I've used it like when I go shopping at the store, and it's amazing how just a few little tips and tricks actually opens up a lot of communication. And I don't know, I've noticed that it makes people, they actually light up because it's an actual real human connection, instead of, like, you know, not like brushing off somebody to the side, if that makes sense. So this book has been a game changer for me. And it talks about communication, and it talks about how to be an effective listener. So I'm excited for today's episode because
we're going to talk about these books a bit.
Yes.
All right, so before we get into it, of course, we have our affirmations and breathing. I'll go over today's affirmations. First, we have, every day I practice listening to others. Every day I practice understanding another person's point of view. I discuss all issues openly and calmly. My thoughts, my voice, my thoughts, and my ideas matter. So they're all related to communication today. Well, I try to make them related to whatever topic we're talking about. So, you ready?
Okay. Ready?
Oh, yeah. Please feel free to join us right now while we breathe and say these affirmations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Every day I practice listening to others.
Every day I practice understanding another person's point of view.
I discuss all issues openly and calmly.
My voice, my thoughts, and my ideas matter.
Yep.
Yes, they do. All right, so let's talk about language a little bit. Obviously, we've been using language since the early human days, and it was probably very simple, and its purpose was just to cooperate with each other because we had big lions and mammoths to take down, and we couldn't do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that language actually got more complicated was because of gossip. People had to know who to trust in the tribe. And so if you did something that made them doubt you, they had to communicate it with each other like, hey, you know what that guy did? I saw him doing this. So I think that's why it feels natural to want to talk about people and gossip about them, because that's how we spread information about who we should like include in our tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't think about the fact that communicating is actually a skill. The way that we use words in our language.
Yes. And I'm just going to add to that, a big part of communication is listening.
Mm-hmm.
Like active listening and being present, not listening as like, oh, you hear noise coming out, but listening to what the person is saying and where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge part of communication.
Exactly. And a lot of people, like, if you don't think of communication as a skill, think about this. Some people actually have jobs based around communication. Yes, like the people who write these books, poets, songwriters, people who write books,
Yes.
like maybe fiction books, like
hostage negotiators.
People who like write these things, they're trying to make an image in your head with words.
Mm-hmm.
Therapists,
Media.
Mm-hmm, they talk to you and they're like using words to help you cope with your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Persuasion people like lawyers.
Yep.
And hostage negotiators, like she said.
I would even say like utility craft workers, because we use it for like safety. You know, if you're dealing with like a lot like high electricity and stuff like that, 3-way communication to make sure that we got the right message so nobody dies. So yes,
that's very important. Even like the suicide prevention hotlines are trying to use words to you know, help people, and they have to learn how to speak to someone that's not going to be harmful and make things more dangerous, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe everyone can benefit from learning what kind of language is harmful.
I think communication actually is one of the most important things for any relationship. If you don't have communication, then what do you have? Like, you can't talk to anybody. Like, that's what connects people. That's what brings people together.
Right. Your family members, your
significant
spouses,
other, yep.
Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Even at your job, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, the heart of this we're going to talk about mostly is what is the difference between good communication and bad communication. So, Liz, can you think of a time when someone communicated with you poorly, or maybe you communicated with someone poorly, and what made it like bad?
Okay, yeah, 100%.
I have so many.
I have so many, but one of the big ones, and this was like from childhood, was if there was an issue, like if usually it was me if I was in trouble. If I was in trouble, I would get the cold shoulder. And that, like, just...
Like, you would give them the cold shoulder?
No, I would get the cold shoulder.
Or you would get it from other people?
I would get it from other people. So, like, I'll say this, like, my parents, they just wouldn't talk to me. And I remember like thinking, oh no, I did something wrong, but then they wouldn't talk to me, so I was just like, what did I do? And I was just like, oh my god. So it was a thing, yeah, and I didn't realize it. And then growing up, as I was in my like young 20s and stuff with like my ex-boyfriends, I would do the same thing to them. I would, and it wasn't until very, very recently that I learned the difference. But that is a huge one that I see just so many people doing it. If you do something wrong and I get mad, then instead of communicating with you, saying, you know what, Allie, I don't like how you handled this situation, instead of saying that and you know, being open about it, I give you the hard, cold shoulder, and I'm just like not talking to you anymore. And I mean, you know,
that doesn't tell me anything. I don't know what she's mad about.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, it reminds me of like school when the girls would be like mad at you, and like just this thing of a cold shoulder. So,
yeah, I
grew up doing the same thing, and it wasn't until I realized what I had wanted. And what I wanted was a good relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And this was with like my significant other. So because I wanted a good relationship, I had to look at my communication skills. And so it's not fair for me to like close myself off and expect you to read my mind and think why and know why exactly I am mad at you, and for you to figure out what you need to give me when like you can't be in my mind. Does it when I say that out loud, it sounds crazy, right? It's but like
a lot of people think like that.
A lot of people think like that.
A lot of people like.
It's like you're supposed to know what I'm thinking. You're supposed to know why I'm mad and why I'm mad at you and what I need to feel better, and how to fix the situation. And it's like you're not gonna know anything because you don't know me and I don't know you as far as like mind reading.
Yeah.
So that was something that I really had to learn, and in learning that, one of the biggest takeaways I learned from communication is that it's not about inciting a reaction in others. It's literally just me saying, hey, Allie, you know, I didn't agree with how you handled the situation. I think it could have been better, but, you know, and being honest, but I still love you. I still, you know, care for you. I think we can do better. I just don't agree with it. And then saying, maybe we can handle this situation from a different perspective. And by me saying that, it makes it more clear for you to understand like where I'm coming from. But I have to be first willing and able to address how I'm feeling on the inside. Yep. And then willing and able to take a look what it is exactly that I need, so then I can turn around and express it to you what you need. And you being a friend, you're able to be like, okay, cool, yeah, I can deal with that. Or, you know, I don't agree with that, but we agree to disagree. There's just so much that can open from just learning about how to communicate and realizing that even if you, like, got mad at me and blew up in my face, it doesn't matter because I at least expressed myself. And in you blowing up, like, let's say it's the worst case scenario, right? Because someone who feels anxious sometimes will think of the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario would be what? You blow up in my face and you call me all kinds of names or whatever. Then that
you kind of learn like, okay, that's how it is then, right?
Yeah, that's how it is. And then you kind of realize like, she's probably angry, or she's probably like, you'll learn that it actually has nothing to do. That it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me. In this situation, you exploding and having this explosive reaction has nothing to do with me. I stated what I needed, but now it's very clear that you might need to address some things within yourself. Yeah. So that just shows, it's almost like showing the true colors of a person. And depending, you know, on the relationship and who you are, I'm a big believer in love and unconditional love and boundaries and loving from afar. So, but depending on how the reaction is on the person, actually will give you more clarity on how to handle the relationship and the situation moving forward. So it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. And yeah, that all stemmed from learning about my bad communication.
I think that communicating with someone openly is like a really good sign of love.
Yes,
yes. Because
you're
showing
that's
that
really
you're
good. Yes.
willing to work with them and not just give up on them.
And
right?
you're not, yes. And you're you're not just enabling them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not communicating with them, like, how are they ever gonna rise to the occasion, right?
Right.
It almost is like you're holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
By you establishing your needs and establishing your accountability, you're actually in turn holding the other person accountable. And it's kind of like if somebody, if the roles were reversed, right, and you told me, like, oh, Liz, I didn't like how you handled this situation, I'd be like, whoa, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm sorry, or, you know, let's fix this, and let's move forward with this, you know. So it kind of puts into perspective, like, oh shoot, you know, maybe I could do some things better.
Because if this person loves you and they want a relationship with you, they don't want to make you feel like that.
Right, yeah. And the love part, like, love isn't, I love you and I'm gonna do everything for you and it's gonna be great and I'll just bend over. No, the love is like tough love sometimes. Sometimes you have to have those really difficult conversations. But what's interesting is that the love stems from you first.
Yep.
And then because you love yourself enough, you fill your needs first, right? And then you still love the friend or the partner or whatever relationship you have. And you love it so much that you're holding it up to this accountability. It's like when you make a kid eat their vegetables.
Yeah.
Like it sounds funny, but it's this love is not ooey gooey and sweet. Like, love is constructive. Sometimes it's a little painful. Sometimes in growing, you know, there's growing pains. But if it's coming from love, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and it makes it stronger.
Yeah.
When you go through hard things and come out the other end.
Yeah, and it actually gives you faith. Because if you have love in yourself, it gives you faith and trust because you know that you prioritize yourself first. And so you're learning how to communicate better. And so it's expressing itself outwardly in your relationships because your relationships change or adapt to how you're expressing yourself. And you're first, I think we've talked about this before a while ago, where you first fill your own cup and then it pours out towards others. So you start practicing the communication. Actually, where it stems from is what I said before. Before you can even communicate to your partner what it is that you need, you got to communicate with yourself and figure out why you're angry, what you need, what needs are important to you that you prioritize first, and then turn around and give it to somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's huge.
So let's talk about some things that make a bad communicator.
Okay.
So first thing is being vague.
Oh, yeah.
So this can come in the form of passive aggressiveness, kind of like your cold shoulder example.
100%.
So that is showing that they're angry, but it's not showing why. So you're being vague. And then not being very specific about the action that made you angry. So my example is like, if you say, like, you don't respect me, that doesn't help anyone change their behavior because you're not telling them what they did to make you feel disrespected.
Okay, so let me ask you, what in your opinion what is respect to you?
I think it's different for everybody.
Yeah, but like for you, I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah.
Respect is for me not pushing my boundaries.
That's a good one.
And treating me and my stuff, like my property, I guess, like how you would want to be treated.
What's another word from, like, respecting it? But yes, like appreciating your stuff, not just throwing it everywhere.
Yeah. But I think boundaries for me is the biggest one because there's boundaries in, like, how I want to be spoken to. There's boundaries in, like, how, like, you know, you interact with me, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Or, like, if you said a thing where it's like, you know, I'm not going to have alcohol for, like, a month. This is the big one. This is a big one that the example I know of is Constant, where I've seen a lot of people practice it, where they're like, oh, you know, I'm going to be on a diet for X amount of months, or I'm going to be on, I'm cutting something. And then people who are like, come on, just have one
That's
drink.
very disrespectful.
That's not respectful.
Yeah, she set a boundary. Like, I don't want to do this for this amount of time. And if you're pestering her, that...
You're not valuing what she wants as far as, like, this boundary for herself, what she's setting up for herself. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, being clear about what actions make you feel that way is very important. In the book, Marshall talks about this parent who was telling his kid, I wish this kid would show some more responsibility. Like, he has a bunch of chores that he has to do, and I feel like he doesn't, like, take responsibility. But then they asked him, like, well, what does that mean? Because the child, from his perspective, he's like, I'm doing the chores, so I don't know what you mean by take up responsibility. So when
I would get told that.
You would?
Yeah.
So when they really probed the father, it's like, what does it look like physically?
Yes.
When you ask them to do something, what are you expecting to see?
Oh, wow.
So when he thought about it, he's like, you know what? Actually, I think the thing I'm asking for is more like obedience.
Oh,
because I want to be able to ask them to do something, and then he just, like, very enthusiastic, like, yep, okay, let's do it. Like, not drag himself to do it.
Wow.
So he was calling it responsibility, but really, when he thought about what it looks like in reality, it was more akin to obedience.
Oh, you're blowing my mind right now.
Because you're answering questions in your head about...
I'm just like, oh, that makes so much sense. Because I remember as a kid, like, and even growing up now, people would tell you, just be happy. Just take responsibility. Just do this. And people think, like, okay, responsibility. I know what the definition of responsibility is, right? But when you talk about, like, what does it look like tangibly? What is taking, and which is why I asked you, right? Because everyone has, it's crazy because there's a literal definition in the dictionary, but everyone takes it in a different way, right? As to what respect is, what responsibility is. And so growing up, there was always a disconnect between me and my parents because of that.
Because they didn't tell you what it looks like.
They didn't tell me what it looked like because they would say, take responsibility. You're not taking responsibility. And I would be frustrated because I'm like, I cleaned this and I cleaned that and I did this.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me?
It's
and
not
I would
checking
feel
the
bad.
box for them, and they're not telling you what will check the box for them.
Yeah, this is huge.
So saying that you want one thing, but you didn't actually take the time to think about what does it look like, you might actually be wanting something else.
So when it comes to your partner, right? And I always go back to partners because it's funny, like, we're adults now, right? So I feel like the biggest relationship is that with our significant other. So what's interesting is I've always heard that, like, your relationship with your parents will definitely influence how your relationship is with your partner. So you actually, because you're learning from your parents, so you're actually perpetuating those behaviors if they go unchecked.
Yeah. So another thing, huge. Actually, I use my parents as what not to do, but
yeah. Well, okay, I think I'm not blaming parents because they're doing the best they can.
They're people. They make mistakes.
But yes, I have parents. Yes, I've learned what not to do also.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can do that. You can use people as like, okay, well, I see that it's not good, so.
And you know what you don't want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So another thing that is an example of bad communication is not listening, I should say.
Yes.
A lot of people, when they talk, they'll, like, think of a response in their head instead of just being present and, like, really taking in what the other person's saying. So some clear signs that you're probably not listening. If you interrupt, clearly you're not listening to what they're saying. I think I talked about this in the how to resolve conflicts. This was, like, on the list of, like, don't interrupt. Not giving your full interested attention. So if you're browsing on your phone, if you're looking at the TV, like, while they're talking, that's not giving your full attention. You have to act like, you have to be interested in them. You cannot act like you're interested in them.
Yeah, you actually have to put the effort in. And it shouldn't be effort if you love the person, right? Because these and that's what's interesting is that these people, like, I say these people, but some people make it seem like it's a chore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, to like listen, and even that kind of says a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also yelling or talking over people is kind of in the same vein as interrupting.
It is.
But you shouldn't have to feel like you need to be louder for them to hear you. Like,
I think that's one of my biggest triggers that I've been working on.
When other people don't listen?
When other people don't listen and they interrupt. Because, and I don't know how to... Actually, I have been learning how to handle it. So, at first I would get mad because in my mind, I had already understood that, you don't interrupt the person, you listen to them. So I would listen to them, but then I would get interrupted by them. So I'm just like, how is it fair? Why is it that I'm the one who's doing the active listening and then they're not, and they don't even care to? And I would be mad and angry. And what I learned is you can actually still, and I actually learned this from like seeing a lot of like the political people. Mm-hmm. So like, I'm just gonna say their names, but like Candace Owens. I was recently looking at like Amy Coney Barrett when she, her going through the what is it? The committee or the trials, the hearings, I should say, the hearings. She would get interrupted and she would actually pause, and she would listen, and then once they were saying, she would know exactly what to say, and they would know exactly what to say, because it goes back to the communication of active listening. And in that, I've been practicing where I'm pausing. Even if I get interrupted, I pause and I listen, and then I say it, and then it's cool because you start knowing exactly what to say. And there are times when it's like, you know what, you're interrupting me right now, can I please, I would like to say this point, and let me finish, and then then you'll go ahead. So you start learning how to do the dance. You start learning how to like navigate those conversations.
Where did you learn how to do that?
As far as the speaking goes?
Or like being more okay with, well, not okay with being interrupted, but more like handling being interrupted. So
where I learned to do it, I would say my motivation to do it was because I first was tired of feeling triggered by feeling interrupted. And next, I wanted to be so good in my communication where like even if I was interrupted, I was able to get points in. And it wasn't really like a competition where I gotta get them in. It was more like I started understanding by what not to do how important communication was. So in order for me to communicate effectively, I had to get over my trigger. And in order to get over my trigger, I had to realize that it wasn't about a loss of opportunity for me to say something. It was just a pause. And then I was able to continue on. So I wasn't losing anything. I was more like, okay, they want to interrupt me. So I'll wait because I got all the time in the world right now because I want to have this conversation because it's really important. And now once they're finished, okay, I'm going to continue on expressing what I think. And it has, again, going back to what I said, it has nothing to do with them and everything to do with you. And you have all the time in the world to express things. And I will add one more thing where even if there's a moment in time when you're having an argument, even if it's academic or whatever, it's not like once that moment is gone, it's gone forever and you can no longer revisit the subject. You can go and like the person can be sitting on the couch watching TV and you can literally go up to them and be like, you know what, I still have these feelings about this and I would like to talk to you about it. And you can open that up calmly and effectively. So just because a moment is past and the heat of the moment is past doesn't mean it's over and done with and you can never bring it up again. And there's nothing wrong with bringing up things that you need to communicate.
I'm learning from you right now because I also get very triggered when people interrupt me.
I'm so triggered. Yeah. And another thing too is that I think part of the trigger is because you can tell that they're not listening to you. And all you want is to be heard. Yeah. So when you can't make the other person listen to you, right? Because we say this over and over. You cannot make anybody do anything. So what does that mean? That means that you want to be heard. So if you want to be heard, then you make yourself feel heard by saying what you need to say. Does that make sense? Yeah. Because it's like, okay, well, sometimes all what matters is for you to say it out loud and you hear yourself saying it, and that's it. And that's part of the idea of, like, it doesn't matter what reaction I get from anybody else. What matters is allowing myself to be heard, and if no one else is going to hear me, I'm going to say it for myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to hear myself. And that's enough.
It is enough sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 So, going on with denying responsibility, you just kind of brought it up. All of our choices and our feelings are our own responsibility in the end. We need to address our own unmet needs and not blame them on outside forces. It's all in you. So, an example is, I started smoking because all my friends are smoking. That's not true. You chose to smoke because you want to be accepted. Ooh. So it's a choice, and it's because of something inside of you that you need.
That's good, because you gotta acknowledge where you're coming from, right? Mm-hmm. So you gotta be able to be open enough to communicate with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. An extreme form of denying responsibility is called gaslighting. This is a very dangerous form of manipulation that you should watch out for. Examples of it is like, I never said that. Like, the definition of gaslighting is when someone tries to make you doubt your own memory or your own feelings to kind of make you try to feel crazy.
Yeah.
So they'll be like, I never said that, or you always react this way, even for small things. That's them trying to make you doubt your own intuition, your own memories, and your own everything. So that's very bad. Don't do that. Comparison also doesn't make anyone feel good. Don't compare someone with another person, saying like that's wrong or like you should be more like this. Making demands. You should never demand anything from anyone. You can request something, but do not demand.
Yeah.
The difference is if someone says no to your request and you react badly, that is now a demand.
Yeah. Because that's part of boundaries. You gotta respect the person's no.
Exactly. And then judgment. Judgment is like projecting your idea of what's right and wrong on another person.
That's such a communication killer. Because if I was being judgmental towards you, would you feel comfortable to communicate with me?
No way.
No.
But
I'm not saying that should stop you either. Just because you don't feel comfortable because there's judgment there, doesn't mean you still should not say what you feel you have to say.
And also part of judging is feeling that you need to like punish someone because of their wrongness.
There's no such, as an adult, there's no such thing as punishing. Like, that's out the window. That if somebody's doing that, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's basically if you'll see someone like, oh, like they think this, well, I'm going to go tell them this because like.
That is not healthy.
No.
100%.
You should never communicate with someone for the purpose of like making them feel bad.
Yeah.
And then another part of judgments that we'll go into more is making assumptions. When you make assumptions, you are making a judgment, and that's the saying. Before what?
When you make assumptions, when you assume.
You make an ass of both of us or something?
An ass out of you and me.
Oh, yeah. All right, so that's a lot about bad communication. Let's talk about good communication. So, can you think of a time when you or someone else communicated excellently about a difficult subject? So this is kind of the reverse of the last question.
Yeah, actually, and I'm actually interested to hear about your examples too. So I'll tell you really quickly. One example was just this past week where I was so proud of myself because I kind of got into this discussion over an issue that I felt really strongly about and that I have worked really hard to like learn about and research and things like that. And for me, what I noticed was in this communication, so one of the things that my body naturally does is I cry. I don't know what it is, but physically the tears will start coming out when there is an uncomfortable situation. And it has nothing to do with what I'm feeling on the inside. It's just this literal like knee-jerk reaction that my body does. So in doing that before, when I would cry, I wouldn't be able to like talk. Now, just recently, I was crying and I was like, don't mind these tears. I still want to have this conversation. But it's just, at this point, it's just a natural reaction that comes from it. So, let's talk. And I was able to talk effectively through my tears. And I was like, oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like, that's a huge one for me because after, 30 years, I've never been able to, really do that. and it's getting better. And so I was able to effectively talk. I was able to state what I wanted to state, and it was not about the other person, and I wasn't looking for an apology or to like make them apologize to me or anything. I just really believed in something, and I had to express it, and I was so proud of myself. So yeah,
That reminds me. I used to be the same way.
mm-hmm.
No matter what the discussion was, if it was hard, the waterworks would come out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I didn't feel safe expressing my emotions.
Yes.
Every time I had before then, like, I'd get yelled at or, like...
Yeah, that's a big one.
So, like, you know, speaking my mind scared me
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And it took me a long time to be in situations where expressing my thoughts was not unsafe.
Yep.
And it was actually more productive.
That's a good point, because the safety came from me. So when I was in that situation with the other person, I was crying, yes, but I knew I was okay. I knew I was safe. Nothing was going on. I could tell that this was a response, but I had practiced and worked on myself so much that I was able to separate myself from this emotional reaction or I should say physical reaction of literal crying, and I was still able to talk, and I was still able to say what I needed to say. So I was giving myself the safety that I needed, and I established that boundary where it's like, don't pay attention to the crying right now, like this is just what it is. So I accepted it. I wasn't beating myself up for like crying, and then again I was still able to move forward. It was great. It was a really good thing, and the person that I was talking to totally like, you know, understood and was like, okay, let's just talk about this. So
That's
it was
so great.
Yeah, it was good.
For me, the person I communicate best with is my partner. From the beginning, like, we've always had really, really good, even when it's a hard topic about something that I felt really bad about. It's hard to get specific because it's all very personal.
For sure.
But, you know, if I ever had a problem, before I even approached him, I would always think, I chose him because I want him to be my teammate, basically. He's on my side. So it's like, I'm not seeing him as the enemy that's trying to hurt me, and do this thing to make me feel bad. I had to erase that and be like, no. This is my partner. He loves me. Whatever he did to hurt me was probably not intentional. He's on my side.
That's a big one.
Oh my God, it's so
They're
helpful.
your allies.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry.
So before I even approach him, I always think about that, and that, like, calms me down. Like, okay, like, he's on my side, and I can talk to him about that. Exactly. So, you know, I just tell him, like, hey, you know, this thing that happened, it made me feel really bad, and, you know, we would listen, and, like, we'd practice the active listening where he'd repeat back, like, okay, so this thing happened, and, it, you know, it made you feel like this, and I'm like, yeah. And then, you know, we'd work on a way to make sure that doesn't happen anymore.
That's awesome.
It's so nice and refreshing to have someone who's willing to talk with you about these kind of things. So let's go into some things that make a good communicator. Listen.
Active listening.
Listen. I can't say that enough. Listening is
the big one.
Before you even speak, you need to listen. And so this book doesn't talk about active listening, but this was something I heard about. It does.
This book talks about active listening.
Yeah. So basically, it's a process where you really just zip it and let the person speak as much as they want to speak.
Yep.
And before you even retort, you must now tell them what they said. And
oh my God, this book says it too. Yes, it's empathetic listening.
Yes.
Yes.
So, and what you're doing is you're letting them know, like, hey, this is what I heard, and you're giving them a chance to tell you, like, okay, yes, that is what I said. So obviously you understand. Or you're saying, you know what? No, I don't know if I said that right. Like, let me correct it.
Right.
So
an example would be like, you know, Allie, you're telling me how to be an effective listener, right? And so I'd be like, it sounds like what you're saying is how to give me, how to speak clearly, right? And when you say it sounds like, you're not saying what I'm hearing. You're not putting yourself into it. So, it opens up the door to correct me and be like, no, I'm not talking about speaking, I'm talking about listening. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Or, you know what, I totally understand what you're saying about active listening, X, Y, and Z. That's your way of repeating back and acknowledging to the other person that you are listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good to put it in question form sometimes, too.
It is.
Like, you asking them.
Yeah.
So, that goes into how to make someone feel like you heard them. Is try to identify the feelings behind what they said. Even if they didn't directly say the feeling,
that's a good one.
Just try to think about, if you were in the situation, how would you feel, and then ask them. So, like, if someone goes like, you're mean, you always say mean things to me, instead of getting defensive and be like, I'm not mean, I don't know what you're talking about, you could be like, it sounds like you want me to know that you're sad and hurt because of something I said.
Yeah. Or, you know, it's kind of sounding like you're angry right now, you know? And when you say that, it's like, I'm not angry, I'm mad, or I'm sorry, I'm not angry, I'm like, I'm disappointed, you know?
Like,
and
they can correct you.
Yeah, so, but what you're doing is you're literally communicating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another example, you know, someone could say, like, you have no idea what I've been through. They even haven't said a feeling, but you can think, like, are you frustrated?
Overwhelmed.
Because you feel like I don't understand and empathize with your hardships? And, you know, just open the door and like, let them tell you.
Yeah, and then the other person could be like, yeah, you know, like, you don't I just feel like I'm not understood, and I'm just feeling really frustrated right now, and I just need you to hear me. I just need you to listen, or, like, you know, hear me out. I don't need you to do anything but that. And now you're open. That person is now telling you what they need. So you're kind of, by you being open and communicating, you're actually affecting the communication between two people. Yeah.
I've also heard some people will, before even talking, like, okay, are you just looking for someone to vent to, or would you like advice?
And on top of that, I'm like, in learning about communication, it's like, look, I don't need you to fix the problem for me. I don't need you to do anything for me. Can you just hear me out?
Just make me not feel crazy.
Just
for, like, feeling what I feel.
Or that, you know, just
Validation.
Hear me out. Just sympathize with me. You don't even have to agree with me. Just let me speak my piece. And sometimes that is all that you need, believe it or not.
Yeah, sometimes you can even, like, solve the problem on your own just by talking
yourself through it. Just by talking it out, and you need that person to just hear you out. Not to interrupt you, not to fix it for you, not to do whatever for you. Just listen.
So, with listening, if you got that down, we can run through what this book says the process of nonviolent communication is. So, observation is the first one. So, identify the specific action that sparked the emotion. This is either with you or the person who's talking to you. You have to identify exactly what it is. So, like I said with the whole, like, you're not being responsible, it's like, okay, so what was it that made you feel like, you know, I wasn't responsible? Or like
so good.
The disrespect thing, you know, you have to say, when you do this, I feel disrespected.
Yeah. So you actually have to, like, pinpoint what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The next one is to identify the feelings. So what feelings come up when this action happens? So if you say, like, I feel like you're being selfish, that's not really a feeling. It talks about feelings versus evaluations in this book.
That's so huge. That's a big one.
So when you say someone's selfish, you're actually evaluating, like, I guess their actions and, like, maybe how much they should be thinking about other people or something. You're putting a standard on them, and if they're not meeting it, they're selfish.
Is that a judgment? Would you say that's
It's a judgment. It's an evaluation. So really, if you're really trying to tell someone, if you feel like they're being selfish, it might be more accurate to say, like, I feel frustrated, or I feel, like, angry or sad when I see you do this, because, you know, I need to feel cared and thought about.
That's just so different than saying...
It is.
Oh, my God.
You have to really, like... And that goes into the next one, identify with your needs. So the feeling, the need, and the action, they're all connected. So the action kind of makes a feeling pop up, and the feeling's based on some unmet need, inside of you. Or a met need if you're trying to compliment them.
That's huge too. Yeah, complimenting them. Yes.
So this could all go in the same thing. Like, sometimes saying that, like, you're smart isn't as nice as saying, like, wow, when you, like, are studying and cracking down, like, I really admire, like, your dedication, and like,
yes,
that's, like, almost a better compliment than just saying, like, you're smart.
Yeah, because it shows the other person that they're seen and that they're heard and that you're paying attention and taking an active curiosity in them.
It's like, when you articulate your points like that, like, I just admire, like, how much, like, you've probably looked into this and really, like, like, taking it in. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. I was gonna say, communication is like watering a flower. Like, the flower is the relationship, and by you putting the communication on it, and on the good side of it is communicating appreciation, communicating love, communicating admiration. That actually makes the person bloom, and it makes you bloom too, because again, I'm going to always say this where it always comes back to yourself, but you're totally right in terms of not only are you communicating the things that need to be worked on, which I wouldn't say are negative, I would just say there are opportunities, and you know everything. There's a lot of things that could go with improvement, because it never ends.
Yep.
But on the opposite end is communicating good things that you liked about your partner, your brother, your whoever, you know.
Like, you know, if your partner brings you flowers, like, you know, I really appreciate that you got me flowers today, because it made me feel like you're thinking about me.
Yes.
And you love me, and like, it gives me good feelings, and you're positively reinforcing things.
And you're giving them pointers as to how you like to be treated.
Like, cues.
Yes. So important.
And the last step, if even necessary, is the request thing I talked about earlier. So you can request something that would enrich your life, as he puts it. And this is, you have to request a specific action.
Okay.
Not something like, you know, I would like it if you just let me be myself.
What does that mean?
Exactly. What does that mean, to let you be yourself? So that was actually one of the examples in the book, that this woman and her husband, she's like, I just wished you would just let me be myself. And he's like, what am I doing that makes you not feel like I'm being letting you be yourself?
Yeah, because I thought I was. You know? Yeah.
So when she thought about it, she's like, you know, when I think about it, I feel like I want you to just smile and, like, tell me go for it every time, like, I think of an idea. So that's an example of, like, what she was really looking for, but he wasn't doing.
Wow. I mean, in that example, how could he possibly know that's what she wanted?
Because she never said it.
Unless she says it, you know? And it goes back to what I said in the beginning, where it's like, you can't read their minds. You're not a mind reader. So you gotta tell me.
That's one of my examples I was going to bring up earlier about a bad communicator, is I used to have a boss. I don't want to go too much into it, but one of the biggest problems was that he did not express to me what, like, completion of a task looks like to him. So, like, he would give me these files and be like, organize these files. And I would do something that I thought looked like it was organized, but he would come back and be like, we didn't organize these files.
Oh,
and I'm like,
gosh.
Well, what are you expecting to see here? Like, what does organizing these files look like to you?
Yeah.
So that was very frustrating.
Yeah. So in the book, Never Split the Difference, it talks about, like, having the bosses, like what you had, by asking open-ended questions, like you say, what, how, it allows the person to kind of start problem solving with you. So when you say, like, what does it look like, now you're throwing the ball into his court, and he has to explain exactly what he's talking about. And then let's say, like, there's not enough room in the filing cabinet, and there's all these files. Then you ask him, you know, how am I supposed to organize if there is not enough room here? And it makes him start thinking, like, how is she supposed to do it? So not only in terms of communicating are you communicating your needs, and you're clarifying, and you're creating more understanding, but now whoever it is, you're bringing the other person into the problem with you. So now you are working together to fix a problem, to actually not even fix a problem, to find a solution.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, we can use communication in so many of our relationships. It's just such a basic skill. But also, you can use it with yourself.
It starts with yourself.
A lot of people communicate badly with themselves.
All the time.
Worse than they communicate with others.
Yeah, yes. Like, you can't start communicating with other people until you start learning it with yourself.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of your self-thoughts start off very judgmental.
Yep.
So you'll think like, I'm a failure.
Or, why am I crying? I shouldn't be crying. Stop crying, and then you're beating yourself up for crying.
And then you can use this good communication to open up the doors to yourself and be like, okay, am I feeling sad? Yeah. Because I didn't pass this test. Mm-hmm. And passing this test would mean that I get a promotion because I need stability and security in my life. Mm-hmm. So you're like identifying the feelings and then the needs, or like, I'm a terrible person. Instead of saying that, you can open it up again. Like, am I feeling guilty because of something I did to someone? Mm-hmm. Because, I hold myself to this standard where I want to be kind to people. Mm-hmm. So talking to yourself in a good way, yeah, start there first.
Okay, so you bring up such a good point, because also recently, so I had somebody communicate a boundary to me. Mm-hmm. And I felt really bad about it. Like, they told me, don't do this, don't do a certain thing, right? And when I heard it, I was just like, oh, it felt like rejection. It felt like a blow. I felt very embarrassed. And I was just like, oh, it felt really small. Mm-hmm. And what I noticed was, in this feeling of feeling defensive because somebody expressed a boundary to me, I could have very easily gotten defensive and turned around and, oh, well, like, you're the one not doing this and you're the one not doing that. Mm-hmm. But instead what I did was I breathed, and I was able to kind of, calm down and see where this was coming from. Mm-hmm. And then what I did was I just said, you know what, I apologize. I apologize for adding to the overwhelm, and, I respect your decision. And it was not my intention to do this. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm sending you lots of love and peace. And that's kind of how the conversation ended. And after the conversation ended, I spent about 2 hours kind of feeling these feelings of guilt and reeling almost, because it felt like a punch in the face. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because I'm talking about respecting people's boundaries, but then when I'm on the other side of it, where I'm being told to respect a person's boundary, I'm just like so embarrassed, and I feel bad about myself, and I feel horrible, and I shouldn't have sent the whatever it is that I sent, or I shouldn't have said anything. And I start doubting myself and saying, oh, why did you do that? And it goes into this spiral. Mm-hmm. So in that, I actually have to learn compassion and grace within myself and see, like, I didn't mean any harm by it. And I may have made a mistake, and I'm sorry. And I apologize for making a person feel this way, because it was a friend. And that's a big part of it, is like dealing with your own emotions and your own, I would say, ego when the shoe's on the other foot and the person's expressing a boundary to you. And it's not rejection, it's not judgment, it's just they need their space,
and they're kind of showing you that, like, they care about you too. They want you in their life
because they're communicating that with you.
They're telling you, like, hey, like, I didn't like this, and if we want to continue our friendship or whatever relationship we have, this has to change. Yeah. And it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing that you don't do this thing that hurts them or makes them feel bad. Yeah. So, and you should actually be proud of yourself for, like, handling that, like, because
it was hard.
It was hard at first.
It was literally 2 hours where I wanted to cry because I was like, oh my God, the friendship is over. But then I calm myself and I soothe myself out of it. And I'm hoping if it happens again next time, I'm able to not take 2 hours doing it. But it's a practice. It's not just something that comes and people know how to do it. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's coming up to you and saying, look, you're not giving me the communication that I need, and I need you to give me a thumbs up and smile and say go for it, don't take it as rejection, and don't take it like you're not good enough, because it's their person voicing what they need.
Yeah, and we're all different people, and we all like different standards of what this looks like and what this looks like, and you're just learning about this person. And it's unfortunate that you had to learn through a mistake, but you're still learning. It's very good. So to wrap this up, language is and continues to be a a tool for our survival in society. And healthy communication is clear, it's specific, and it's honest. And unhealthy communication, on the other side, is vague, it's harmful, and sometimes just exaggerated. And I would say all misunderstandings are like the root of just not communicating well enough between each other. So, anything else you want to add?
I would just reiterate these books. Allie's gonna let me borrow that book because it sounds amazing. But these books are really good for beginning on communication. So there's just some resources for
I think you guys will eat these books up if you get them.
Some tools, to have to, improve your communication skills, and you'll notice it improve your relationships too. So, because I've noticed it on mine, and I've applied the techniques. So, and Allie's noticed it on hers, and she's applied the techniques. So. I
hope that helps you guys and really take it to heart. Next episode, we're going to talk about facts and opinions and why both of them matter. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye, guys.
Bye.